Good morning, everyone. Hello, my name is Linda Thompson. I'm a national coordinator with the Women's Support Project, focusing on commercial sexual exploitation as a form of violence against women. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present at the National Summit this morning. I was asked to really flag up the current situation and the challenges that are faced by women who are involved in selling or exchanging sex, commercial sexual exploitation in Scotland. And I think I'd like to go back and actually look at COVID, because during COVID, the Scottish Government and COSLA both noted that women involved were a high priority and were a priority group. And I think that was in recognition of that vulnerability. But those vulnerabilities predated COVID. But what COVID did was show the absolute vulnerability and the precarious circumstances in which women find themselves in. And the impact of COVID was devastating for women. It had a huge impact on their money. And with that, it had a knock-on impact on their housing situations and their stable accommodation. It had an impact on their mental health. It had an impact on their physical health, on their sexual health. It had an impact on their safety and their ability to make choices in constrained circumstances, both in the online and on the offline context of selling or exchanging sex. Women found it a frightening time, a scary time. And actually, before COVID, they were scraping by. But what COVID meant, it put them on the floor. Women were not able to access supports and financial benefits, and they never really recovered from it. And that is a report in Ireland named that, in fact, exploitation just continued as usual, because there was still a sex industry that continued to stay open. There was still the demand for paid for sex in different forms. So while there's profit there to be made, the sex industry in many ways would ensure that women were still in that situation and being forced in that situation to continue to sell or exchange sex. But the impact of COVID has not gone away. And actually, where we are facing now with the cost of living rise, in many ways, it is the second crisis. And where's the learning from the first being implemented into the second? As someone said to me recently, well, aren't women lucky that they have this to fall back on? Well, I would say that the women that would support it via the Encompass network and much broader do not feel lucky that this is what they have to be involved in. We undertook a snapshot with the 100 women across 1 week in 5 services at the end of October into November. And that clearly shows that women are not lucky. Women, in fact, have complex needs. They come from backgrounds of disadvantage, discrimination, and abuse. They have experiences of other forms of violence. And currently, high numbers have mental health issues. They're living, having experienced violence and abuse whilst they're selling or exchanging sex. They have housing issues. There's high levels of problematic substance misuse. There's links with serious and organised crime. And I think this picture clearly flags up this is the reality for women in Scotland who are involved in selling or exchanging sex. And this reality flags up that whilst this is complex, we therefore need a comprehensive, multifaceted, consistent approach across Scotland to ensure that women are not in situations that they have to sell or exchange sex. But the reality is, with the cost of living that's been felt by everybody across the board, this is increasing women's vulnerability. Women are bearing the weight and shouldering the responsibility of the financial impact of the cost of living. And this means that they are in more vulnerable situations and at risk of being sexually exploited. Many women have moved into the offline world and the online world to sell or exchange sex, not only as their first job or main means of income, but as their second job to support teaching jobs, healthcare jobs, civil servant jobs. So actually more women are being pushed into this system. So with an increased supply and that flooding of the market coupled with reduced demand, because obviously men have less money with which they can purchase sex, the increased supply with reduced demand means that prices have gone down. So women are in situations at the minute where they're having to work longer hours, seeing many, many, many more men. And that means many, many more episodes of unwanted sex. Coupled with this, punters, sex buyers, clients are in a more powerful position because they know that women need to see clients. Therefore, there's an increased expectation of what they will get for their money and an increased expectation that women will override their own boundaries and have to take part in more risky sexual activity. So women are in less situations to be able to maintain their boundaries and their safety, and the violence is increasing, and the reports are coming through from women. We also know that this means that women have reduced options to exit and move on as and when they choose and feel trapped within this system. Women talk, the new women moving in are entered into situations that they do not know the reality of. They don't know where the services are. They don't know where support is, coupled with the sex industry itself, with the management, the strip clubs, with brothels, etc., continuing to want to make profit. And so they know that women that will need to join the industry, and that creates that vulnerability. And the much smaller client pool know that they're in a much stronger bargaining position. Women are not able to exercise choice. They're not able to say no to men that they do not want to have sex with. They're in situations where they have to continue selling sex when they don't want to in order to survive. And not only do that they're having to have the kind of sex that they would not want to have. They're in situations where they're unable to say no. They're unable to say no to clients because they don't know when there's going to be another one coming along. And not only that, they're unable to say no to individual sexual acts. And I think that it is what we know is that for women, they're having to take massive risks. But actually, I would say that men are placing women in more risky situations when men are well aware of the power, and because of this power imbalance, they're enacting it. So I would question at the moment the concept of choice and how that is applying for women's lives, moving into or having to contemplate entry into the sex industry. They're unable to say no. They're unable to say no to clients. They're unable to say no to sexual acts. So I think it is incumbent upon us, with a sense of urgency and a call to action, that we need to move this forward. We have existed without a dedicated strategy for commercial sexual exploitation for decades now. And I think in your discussions today and in your collective role and in your leadership, it is about how you have that lens of vulnerability to commercial sexual exploitation and have that as part and parcel of your discussions today. Because I'm sure that we would all agree that no woman should be forced to choose between an abusive situation of any type or destitution. But that is the reality in Scotland at the minute. And I think in order to prevent this happening, that we need urgently to look at what we need to set in place in the short term, but also in the long term, to ensure that women are in situations where they're faced with choices, where they have no other way to pay bills, to pay their rent, ensure that there's food on the table for themselves or for their children. So I would say at this time and in the morning, that as you move forward with your discussions, please ensure that this vulnerability is present and the women are present today with you. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you this morning. Thank you.